the riders.
This is Samuel Collins.
And where are we now, Mr. Collins?
We're actually in Lancaster, which is South Manchester, which actually that's 15 miles south of Mandeville, and maybe about 11 miles north of Tollgate in Clarendon.
It's far up in the hills though, eh?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
We're here to have a chat with my mother,
Who's she?
who is Mrs. Mary Mushet Collins. She was born in this district, Lancaster.
Oh, Lancaster district.
Okay,
right. Yeah.
My sister that is standing right beside me here, Erna, she'll be migrating to Canada soon, and she thought that it would be good to have an interview with my mother as a legacy.
Yes.
You know, because we think that our mother has made a very significant contribution to this area, socially and spiritually. This church is the Emmanuel, it's a branch of the Emmanuel Apostolic Church. The headquarters is situated in Kingston at 12 Slipe Road in Kingston, where the Tropical Theatre used to be. My mother is the pastor of this church. She has been pastor in this church from 1975.
Okay. Why are you going to Canada?
Well, I've been given the opportunity to go, and we have children, my husband and myself, and we think it's a great place for them to be. So we got through, and so we're going.
Okay.
I was born here in Lancaster. I remember walking from home, that's further down, to church, walking from home to school. I grew up here with my mother, my father, and my sisters and brothers. There are 7 of us. I am the 6th one.
Yeah. Your father, is he still alive?
Deceased.
Oh.
My father, Ephraim Collins, Ephraim Manasseh Collins, actually came to South Manchester from North Manchester, Craighead, in North Manchester, around 1951. He came here to work with a cousin of his, which was called a doctor, Dr. Collins, who owned a property rearing cows. So he came to be the property manager. And eventually he met my mother. My mother at that time was a young evangelist. Late 20s, she was out on the evangelical field, witnessing, and he heard the pastor at the time. There's a church that they used to attend on a hill in Lancaster here called Zion. So she heard the pastor making reference to this young lady who's out, and he fell in love with what he heard and decided that he wanted to make her his wife. So eventually, when she came home, they met, and they got married in about 1953.
Okay.
My father, he was a driver by profession.
Driving what?
He drove like trucks, market truck, cane truck. For quite a while during our lifetime, he was away in Clarendon drawing cane, or in Montego Bay drawing cane. Eventually he came closer home. He operated a fish van for a gentleman somewhere where you're coming from now, Warwick Hill. I used to live on Warwick Hill. You drove to Warwick Hill.
Okay.
And then afterwards he drove a taxi for another gentleman, Mr. Adrian Biggs, in that same area where you're coming from, Warwick, Java. And ultimately he bought his own car and started his own motor vehicle fleet. So he ended up being a minibus operator, flying between Kingston and Mandeville, Lancaster, Mandeville, Kingston, until he retired from that.
What kind of man?
He was a very cheerful man, very hardworking, very dedicated. Taught me a lot of things, because this is a farming community. We grow things like yellow yams, sweet potatoes, cassava, corn,
cane,
sugar cane, pumpkin, catch crops, peas, red peas, gungo peas, and so on. We are near to an area which grows a lot of mango, that is called Victoria Town. As a boy, we had to get our donkeys and walk to get mango. Or you had people who travel from there with their donkeys selling mangoes. But I think 2 hurricanes ago, there was a phenomenon in the area where mangoes were growing in the area, and not even the pigs around could manage mangoes. It was a phenomenon that happened after, I can't remember which hurricane.
One of the hurricanes, eh?
Yes, after the hurricane. It brought about a fertility in the area and brought mangoes.
I can remember coming home from school and looking forward to her in the kitchen, because we had an outside kitchen. If Mama was not in the kitchen, then she would be picking coffee, the coffee piece. But she would ensure at all times that we had something to eat. Don't care what it is, if it's potato pudding, if it's hominy corn porridge, whatever it is, she would ensure that we always have something to eat. She would go out of her way to ensure that we get to school, that we have our books, and that is what I always love about her. I recall sometime in Christmas time, my father used to love to take us out, and my mother never really agreed with it. I remember they used to have some get-together, whether it's square dance, fair, whatever it was in the square down there.
Where? Lancaster?
Lancaster Square. And my mother decided my father shouldn't take us. I was young then. And my father got all of us into the vehicle and took us. When we got back home, we couldn't find her. We searched high and low, we couldn't find her. My mother went underneath the bed and put herself on top of a suitcase and bent down and looked, and all I saw was her belly moving. She was laughing like crazy. We finally found her, but that is something that I remember as a child.
She was giving us scare.
Yeah, she scared us that night. She scared us.
She thought she'd run away.
Yes.
In those days back then, growing up, they had little fables.
Of course.
For example, they would talk about the old man caw bird. And whenever you hear that bird,
which bird?
Cawing, it's a type of crow.
Called what again?
The old man caw.
Bird.
Old man caw.
Okay.
It was, I think, a family of the crow.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you heard it, you know that rain is going to fall. Or you see the red ants coming out of their nest and crawling all over the place. That's a sign that rain was going to fall.
Yes.
And I really didn't buy the story. And then she went even further to say that for the 7 of us, whenever she was pregnant and approaching labor, about 3 days before she went into labor, a screech owl would fly over and screech 3 times.
Each time?
Each time.
Yeah.
And that told her that she needed to prepare herself for labor. And I really didn't believe it. And I would say, Mama, not really go so. Until eventually, I bet up a story in the Bible with Jacob.
Which say about?
Jacob, how Jacob actually got about 2/3 of his uncle's sheep, where he actually tricked his uncle by carving this juniper wood and held it before the goat and the sheep when they were mating, and scared the female, and the kids
born with stripes.
With stripes.
Yes.
With stripes. I said, whoa, it seems as if something really, between nature and people like that. So from then I started to have some belief in these things.
Yes.
But that's something that she used to tell us.
So your mother was in tune with nature and the things of nature?
It's very much so, sir.
Birds and the beasts.
Very much so.
Yes, unusual.
Very much so.
At Lancaster in the parish of Manchester, where Mr. Collins is introducing us to his mother, Miss May, who is the pastor of a church.
This is my mother, Mary Amanda Mouchette Collins.
Right. What do you call her?
Mama.
What do I call her?
Sister Mary.
Okay. Sister Mary?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing? Where were you born, Sister Mary?
In Lancaster here, as a young girl, even at 12 years old, I accepted the Lord.
So, Aunt May, how come that happened to you at such an early age?
I was going to a service one Monday night with one of my older sisters, and she was singing, hey, that old covetous mind I had, that mind is gone, that old liard mind I had, that mind is gone. And I said to her, mine is gone. She said, it can go tonight. At that time, I was 12 years old.
Yes.
And then I attended, we were going to a meeting. And it wasn't up in the church. It was in a home. They used coconut boughs to cover it. And the barbecue that they dried their stuff into, like pimento and coffee. And it was there the meeting was held.
Yes.
And that very night, I gave my heart to the Lord at age 12.
So you were the only one in the family who gave your life to the Lord?
My sisters, all my 4 sisters.
What about your brothers now?
He confessed that he gave his life to the Lord, but afterward, he take it back. I wanted was to be a teacher.
Yeah.
But my parents, they were poor and they didn't encourage just through the money problem. Yes. But even my teachers know that there was certain ambition in me. Or even in school, I used to come first. And 3 of the classes, I didn't sit in them. They call them skip class. Didn't sit in them. Yes, sir.
So you're a bright little girl then?
Yes, that's what they said.
Yes. so since you couldn't be a teacher, what you decided to do?
Whatever I would decide to do, it would take money, and my parents didn't have it on me, so I do domestic work.
Yes. What did your father used to do then?
He used to cultivate.
So at one point in time, he actually went to Cuba, where he spent maybe about 5 years or so, working on the plantation, sugar plantation there, in order to assist the family economically. But just to back up a little bit in terms of her schooling, because she would share with me how bright she used to be. But 2 things. She became a young evangelist very early, so she spent quite a bit of her life traversing Jamaica, preaching.
Early, you mean what?
She was in her early 20s.
Before she got married?
Before she got married.
Yes.
So she would traverse Jamaica, various places, witnessing to people about giving their lives to the Lord.
By herself?
Well, they used to go out as a team. So she went with a lady who was called Mother Ambrosine Wright. Ambrosine Wright was maybe the main person at the time, the leader of the team. And she, as a young girl, used to accompany her. So she spent quite a while of doing that. And then, of course, she got married late 20, going into 30. Her husband, Ephraim Collins, really hailed from North Manchester, Craighead in North Manchester, and came south. He was actually invited by a cousin he had who was a doctor, Dr. Collins. He had a big property here in Lancaster, and he reared cows. So my father actually came to be the manager of the farm. And now, when he was here, he was invited to the church, Zion Hill Church. At that time, my mother was on the battlefield, as you would say, as an evangelist. And the pastor was giving a report because he had gone to visit the group on the battlefield. And he came and was giving a report to the congregation about what was happening. And he was impressed with the work that she did.
Yes.
So he made mention of her. And my father and the congregation heard the reference and decided that this is the lady he was going to meet and marry to. So eventually she came back home. They met. The pastor introduced her, and they decided they were going to get married. And then her life, of course, evolved during the time of marriage and having children quite early into that of a housewife.
We meet in church, and then he said in his mind that it's me he's going to marry to.
What did he look like? Was he a good-looking man?
He was what?
Was he good looking?
Him good looking, never stay like me. But he said, my mind, my spirit was good looking, so he loved me. Oh my God.
Or she was saying that her life then, Mr. Collins, revolved around bringing up her children.
Bringing up her children. So her occupation then was being a housewife.
Yes.
But she still had the ambition of wanting to be a teacher. So at one point in time, she saw an ad from England. What was the name of that college in England that you wanted to go?
Bennett's College.
Bennett's College.
Yes.
Bennett's College.
They used to give extension courses, no?
Yes, so it was a correspondence course that she saw and wanted to do it.
Yes.
But when she mentioned it to her husband, he did not want to allow her because he thought that England was too far away and that she might not return. And at that time, I think she had just had about 4 of us.
Yes.
Of the 7. So he was concerned about her going away and leaving us.
A point of order.
Yes.
Point of order, Brother Sam.
Yeah.
This Bennett College, you could get the course through mail.
Yes,
I make the mistake and said,
No.
well, I was
We correct.
planning to go.
It's an extension
You can get it through mail.
Yes.
But he said he's not going to support it, for his friend did the same to his wife, and when she passed the exam, she turned her back on him.
Turn her back on him?
Yes, she refused to acknowledge him as her husband. So you want to joke about it, sir?
Yes.
So hear me to him. You'd have frightened to see the pretty shoes and shirt and pants them he would give you. But he would not support this idea that I should get the course through mail. You see, so that's why I didn't take it.
Yes. So what you decided to do when you realized you couldn't take the course?
I just dropped it. I couldn't. So I go, to be honest, doing domestic work.
Did you have any problems with your children? I mean, especially since you had to be working out and all that?
Oh, no, sir. My mom take care and they obey her.
Yes. On Hill and Gully Ride at Lancaster in Manchester, with Aunt May and her children and the congregation of the church of which she is the pastor, the Emmanuel Apostolic Church. Here is Aunt May's 6th child.
I'm the 6th child.
6th child.
Baby girl.
Right.
Well, one thing I remember, my father used to be upset that was always at her feet. Wherever she is in the house, that's where we would be.
Yes.
So we're having dinner. Wherever she is, that's where we are. When you come home from school, Mama used to be either in the kitchen cooking, or she's in the garden picking coffee and singing. Yeah. When she's picking coffee and singing, I used to worry.
Why?
It meant that dinner wasn't ready.
So you kids were always congregating at her feet?
At her feet, yes. I don't ever remember hearing my mom calling my father.
Yes.
I don't remember that. And to date, I even bring it into my own relationship. I tell my husband, don't want the children to hear whatever. If you're upset with each other, they're angry, don't let the children hear. She always, I can remember, I went to Homewood, technical. I was the only one who went away from home. I had to board out.
Yes.
I did home economics as that was my area, my specialty.
Yes.
And I did the sciences.
You had to board out?
I had to board out.
Uh-huh.
And I remember coming home, my mother had to always find the money. Well, get it from my dad or work some way when he doesn't have it to get it. And I remember coming home and she didn't have the money and the shoes for me to go back. And she went to Mr. Meikle. Mr. Meikle had one pair of brown shoes there.
Who's Mr. Meikle?
Mr. Meikle was a shopkeeper in the area, in the square. And I hated the shoes. But my mother went and she asked for the shoe, and because she got the shoe for me to wear, I wore it. I hated it, but I wore it, and I tell her thanks for it, because I realized she was making the sacrifice. She always made sacrifices for us.
Why you hated the shoe?
It's ugly.
How can a shoe be ugly? So anyway, you wore it.
I wore it.
Yes.
And I told her thanks for it. And
Mr. Meikle was a village shopkeeper. He operated as both a retailer and a wholesaler. So he would take his truck, he would go to Kingston, and would get all the goods and come down, and he would stock things. His little shop was like a department store. So apart from selling the mackerel and the flour and the sugar, he had the shoe section, he had the clothing section. And I can remember when I was heading off to college, because in those days, CAST, which is now UTEC, was the college of the day. And I was heading off, and I did not have the necessary clothing and so on. And my mother went, because what would happen? Because the Collins name in the district was one of integrity.
Yes.
I mean, my father used to operate a minibus, and my mother as a Christian, because in the community, if they call you brother so-and-so, or sister so-and-so, you are of a person of high integrity that they respect.
That title almost.
Yes. So my father was Brother Collins and my mother, Sister May.
Yes.
So we could get credit from almost anybody if money wasn't available, because they know that they would get the money when it was due.
Yes.
So she went to Mr. Meikle and credited whatever she could in terms of clothing and shoes. But the best thing that I remember she credited was a grip. In those days they called the grip Dulcimina.
Oh, yes.
The Dulcimina grip.
Yes.
And she packed that grip and I headed off to cast.
Put all your clothes in it and stuff?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it wasn't that I was like a boy. I was probably about 19, 20
yes.
at the time.
But
she's a young man. But she still had that responsibility and felt that obligation to actually send me off yes. To cast.
Yes.
And to back up what Erna was saying in terms of her caring, whenever she goes to Mandeville, we could always look out for Patty's ice cream, even if it's an ice mint or a mint ball,
yes.
because we love mint ball in that day. And I tell a little story about mint ball and her. We had a health center in the community that would vaccinate children.
Uh-huh.
And so one day we went for vaccine. And I heard all those children screaming. And I decided I was not going to take that vaccine. I was probably about four years old. And so when it was my time, I started running up and down all over the place. Mm-hmm. Then we had these ladies, these village ladies who used to assist the public health nurse
right.
with the vaccination. And they were after me all over the place like 60 sexy chicken chasing him. You know, they couldn't catch me. Yes. Eventually, Mommy told him about the mint ball, because mint ball was my specialty. Yeah. Because as you know, it says that there's some connection between pregnancy and what your mother did. Now, she used to eat a lot of mint balls when she was pregnant with me.
Oh.
So I came up and loved mint ball. So eventually, she told him about the mint ball. So they bought a mint ball at Miss Janie. Miss Janie was the lady with the little shop in the area. And that was what they used and caught me. And they brought me to the nurse.
How they caught you?
With the mint ball and the cap just captured me. And brought me kicking and screaming into the nurse. Yeah. So when I went into the nurse, she was washing up because she thought everything was over. And she was upset. So the injection that I got was a most painful one. When she plunged the needle in, I saw blood flying out.
Oh boy. Right,
and my mother was most upset, you know, but she was the type of home person that would heat the water and make sure that she bathed that every night. It was so on and so on. And to the extent that I told myself at that time, because she was a nurse and she was short, I told myself in my mind, I would never marry to a nurse or a short woman. And I ended up married to both.
Both?
Yes. My wife is both a nurse and short. Yeah, so that was the type of person she was. Very caring.
Yes.
I mean, and wedding cakes, because in those days, only special persons were invited to the wedding.
Yes.
The children couldn't go, so they would probably invite just one member of the family. But she would not touch that cake until she comes home with it, so that she would break a little piece for everybody to get a piece of it.
Yes.
That's how she was.
I remember the fish. We're always getting fresh fish. I don't know where they got it from.
Where?
Mama always provide fresh fish every Monday, and banana, ripe banana. And she would bake some lovely potato pudding and how many corn. So if you don't have anything else, you're going to get something. And she would go to Mandeville, and once she come home, everybody would congregate around her. You're getting a mango or two, but she and my father used to hide the nice ones.
Before I went to cast, I was drawn into the National Youth Service. I attended Manchester High School, went into the National Youth Service and served as a teacher. Actually didn't want to do teaching because I thought that it was a woman's job. And most of my teachers were women. I thought it wasn't a job for men. But eventually I learned it was just more than just chalk and talk. The relationship you develop with the children. So I had my first job at the Prattville All Age as a pre-trained teacher. I taught there for 2 years, and then I went on to West Manchester, a place called Comfort Hall, and served another 2 years. And then in 1978, I went to cast.
Yes.
Now, when I went to cast, I actually went to do business administration because I wanted to be an accountant. Why I wanted to be an accountant is that back in those days, my father had an insurance policy. And then at the end of the year, he used to get in a specialist, an accountant who would come in and look through the books, update the books, and then submit the information, and then you would get a rebate. So I saw this gentleman in his black pants, white shirt, and black tie, and I was impressed. You know, I was probably about 12, age 12, I was impressed. And I said, Papa, what the man there do? And he said, son, him accountants. That's what he said, him accountants. And he was genuine. Yeah. Because it was years afterwards that I learned my father really couldn't read. Yeah, yeah, but he had that ambition for us to go. And how I learned that he really couldn't read, because he used to come in and saw us studying and say, I want to do. And we say, I read, Papa. And say, I saw man read by just looking in the book, because we were just silently reading. And I couldn't understand why he was saying, if I saw man read, until I passed my grade 9 achievement. And he came with a gleaner. For the very first time, I was seeing a gleaner coming into the home. But as a minibus operator, the people on the bus were talking about the past, and he used to come in the gleaner. So he bought the gleaner and came and threw it down and said, I should look in it. And I said, Papa, look in it for what? He said, look in it, boy. And I said, Papa, look. But, you know, he was this stern person, and, you know, once he said, give you a directive. So I went in and I realized the result had come out. Looked and saw that I had passed. And he was very happy, very elated.
Oh, your name was in there?
My name was inside there. So, for what he told me, he might count ants. And I said in my mind, it don't sound so good. But whatever it is, I want to beat. Yeah.
With the Collins of Lancaster in Manchester gathered around their mother, Aunt May, telling us their family stories. We'll hear some more from the Collins family next week. Until then, we're up the hill. Thank you for watching Hill and Gully Ride.